Japanese men have locked women out of their lives. Japan's birth rate has fallen so low that entire towns are vanishing from the map. That is not a headline designed for shock value. It is a measurable demographic reality, and it signals something far deeper than economics or policy. It signals withdrawal. It signals that a growing number of men have quietly stepped away from relationships, from family formation, and from the expectations that once defined adult life, and the consequences are unfolding in real time. This is what happens when the men within a society collectively get fed up and walk away. A nation cannot sustain itself when its future generation never arrives. In Japan, a significant number of men report little to no interest in pursuing romantic relationships, marriage, or starting families. They are often referred to as herbivore men, not as an insult, but as a cultural label for men who have turned their energy inward toward hobbies, careers, and solitary pursuits rather than outward toward courtship and family building. The implications of the shift are immense. Over time, birth rates decline, schools close, communities age, and the economic engine that once relied on a steady supply of young workers begins to slow. This conversation is not about assigning blame. It is about observing cause and effect. When men disengage from dating, from partnership, and from fatherhood, the impact is structural. It touches labor markets, social services, housing, healthcare systems, and the cultural continuity of a nation. For decades, Japan has wrestled with declining fertility rates. In recent years, the numbers have reached historic lows, placing the country among the lowest birth rates in the world. Entire rural regions now face depopulation so severe that infrastructure built for thriving towns stands underused and silent. To understand this moment, we must first understand the shift in mindset. Historically, men have often taken the lead in initiating relationships. Courtship rituals across cultures have largely depended on male initiation, pursuit, and commitment. That pattern has shaped expectations for generations. When large numbers of men decide not to participate in that process, the system does not simply adjust overnight. It stalls. Women who may not be accustomed to initiating in large numbers find fewer opportunities to connect. Social spaces grow quieter. The informal dance that once connected strangers slows to a near stop. In Japan, surveys over the past 2 decades have shown rising percentages of men who report no interest in dating. Many describe satisfaction in solitary activities, whether gaming, fitness, creative work, or simply personal freedom. Some cite economic pressures. Others reference long work hours, high costs of living, or cultural expectations that make marriage feel burdensome. Still others simply express contentment with independence. Whatever the reasons, the cumulative result is measurable. Fewer marriages lead to fewer births, and fewer births reshape the demographic pyramid. Demography moves slowly at first, then all at once. When a birth cohort shrinks, the effect is subtle in the beginning. A few fewer students in a classroom, a few more elderly neighbors on a street. But over decades, the imbalance compounds. Japan now faces a rapidly aging population, with a shrinking workforce tasked with supporting an expanding elderly demographic. Pension systems strain, healthcare costs rise. Rural towns, once vibrant with families, now struggle to attract young residents. The quiet choice of individuals becomes the loud reality of national policy debates. There is also a cultural dimension. In an era shaped by technology and social media, perceptions of relationships have shifted globally. Digital platforms amplify attention, comparison, and unrealistic standards. Both men and women navigate an environment saturated with curated images and constant evaluation. For some men, the perceived risks of rejection or the effort required to compete in a hyper visible dating marketplace outweigh the perceived benefits. Retreat becomes rational. Solitude feels simpler. Peace feels attainable without negotiation. Meanwhile, economic pressures reinforce the retreat. Japan has experienced decades of economic stagnation compared to its peak growth era. Younger generations face job insecurity, rising living costs, and housing challenges. Traditional expectations that a man should be financially stable before marrying can create a psychological barrier. If stability feels distant, postponement becomes indefinite delay. Indefinite delay becomes permanent disengagement. The result is a feedback loop. As fewer people marry and have children, social norms shift further. Young people grow up seeing fewer examples of stable long term partnerships in their immediate circles. The path that once seemed default now feels optional or even obsolete. When enough individuals opt out, opting in becomes culturally unfamiliar. This is not a phenomenon isolated to one country. South Korea, parts of Europe, and other developed nations report similarly low fertility rates. However, Japan's demographic trajectory is particularly advanced, making it a preview of what prolonged disengagement looks like. The government has introduced policies aimed at encouraging marriage and childbirth, from financial incentives to expanded childcare support. Yet, policy alone cannot reverse a mindset shift. When the underlying desire for partnership declines, incentives have limited reach. Some observers argue that modern life has altered the cost benefit equation of relationships. In previous generations, economic survival often depended on partnership. Today, individuals can sustain themselves independently, especially in urban settings. Independence brings freedom, but it also removes structural pressure to pair up. Without pressure, motivation must come from desire. If desire weakens, participation drops. There is also the question of identity. For decades, cultural narratives emphasize self realization, personal growth, and autonomy. These values are not inherently harmful. They can empower individuals to pursue meaningful lives. However, when autonomy becomes absolute priority, compromise can feel like loss. Relationships require negotiation, sacrifice, and shared responsibility. For individuals accustomed to complete control over their time and space, the transition to partnership can feel restrictive. Women in Japan face their own complex pressures. Work expectations, societal standards, and the balancing act between career and family create difficult choices. In some cases, women also delay or opt out of marriage due to financial independence or dissatisfaction with traditional gender roles. The demographic decline is therefore not solely a male phenomenon. It is a multifaceted shift in expectations, incentives, and aspirations. However, when a significant portion of men explicitly withdraw from dating, the imbalance becomes visible. A society depends on cooperation between its men and women. When either side disengages, the social fabric thins. Courtship becomes rare. Family formation slows. Economic planning becomes uncertain. The aging population grows without replacement. Over time, even cultural confidence can erode as citizens witness the shrinking of their own communities. The phrase that men are the gatekeepers of reproduction may sound provocative, but it reflects a biological reality. Conception requires participation from both sexes. If large numbers of men choose not to participate, reproduction declines regardless of policy incentives. Likewise, women historically have been described as gatekeepers of intimacy. When both sides retreat into separate spheres, connection becomes scarce. It is important to approach this discussion with nuance. Not every man in Japan has withdrawn. Not every woman desires marriage. Many couples continue to build families and meaningful lives. Yet trends matter. When survey data shows rising percentages of men who report no interest in romantic involvement,
The system is collapsing. Cash will be worthless soon. Crypto is your only escape. Angry's Crypto Academy is linked in the description. Go check it out now.
policymakers take notice. When fertility rates fall below replacement level for decades, economists project long-term contraction. And what does contraction look like in daily life? It looks like shuttered schools. It looks like neighborhoods dominated by elderly residents. It looks like labor shortages that require automation or immigration to fill gaps. It looks like increased tax burdens on a shrinking workforce. It looks like a society quietly adjusting to being smaller than it once was. Some men describe their withdrawal not as protest, but as preference. They cite reduced stress, financial freedom, and the ability to pursue personal passions without negotiation. In a world where work demands are high and social competition intense, solitude can feel like relief. The absence of relational obligation can feel like clarity. For individuals, that choice may enhance well being. For a nation, millions of such choices reshape the future. The cultural label herbivore men emerged to capture this shift. It suggested a gentler masculinity, less aggressive in pursuit, less driven by traditional expectations of dominance or conquest. Critics framed it as weakness, supporters framed it as evolution. Regardless of interpretation, the demographic consequences remain measurable. Technology has further transformed social interaction. Virtual communities can satisfy social needs without physical proximity. Entertainment, gaming, streaming media, and online networks provide stimulation and belonging without requiring partnership. For some, these substitutes reduce the urgency of seeking a spouse. Digital satisfaction competes with traditional milestones. Meanwhile, public discourse sometimes grows polarized. Narratives that portray men as unnecessary or portray women as adversarial can deepen mistrust. When mistrust increases, engagement decreases. When engagement decreases, opportunities for mutual understanding shrink. A culture of suspicion replaces a culture of cooperation. In Japan, government officials have publicly acknowledged the demographic crisis. Campaigns encourage young people to marry. Municipalities offer matchmaking events. Financial support for families has expanded. Yet the challenge remains psychological as much as economic. If individuals do not perceive partnership as desirable, structural support may not suffice. This raises a broader question about modern societies. What happens when individual autonomy outpaces collective sustainability? When personal fulfillment becomes detached from communal continuity, birth rates fall. When birth rates fall below replacement level for long enough, populations age and shrink. Economic growth slows. Innovation may continue, but scale diminishes. Some analysts suggest that demographic decline could lead to a more automated, efficient society with fewer people enjoying higher standards of living. Others warn that shrinking populations struggle to maintain infrastructure and social services. The truth likely lies between these extremes. Adaptation will occur, but not without strain. The emotional dimension cannot be ignored. Loneliness is rising in many developed countries. Surveys show that many individuals who remain single do not necessarily prefer lifelong solitude. Some feel disconnected, uncertain, or fatigued by modern dating dynamics. If both men and women feel dissatisfied with the current system, the outcome is paralysis. Japan's situation illustrates how quickly demographic momentum can shift. Once a generation passes without replacement, recovery becomes exponentially harder. Even if fertility rates rise later, the smaller base of young adults limits the total number of births. Time compounds decline just as it compounds growth. When discussing these issues, it is vital to avoid hostility. Framing the situation as one group versus another oversimplifies a complex ecosystem of incentives, expectations, and economic realities. The focus should remain on understanding why disengagement occurs and what conditions might restore mutual interest. Some propose workplace reforms to reduce excessive hours and increase work life balance. Others advocate cultural shifts that value partnership without rigid gender expectations. Affordable housing, childcare support, and community building initiatives may lower barriers to family formation. However, these solutions require long term commitment and cultural openness. The central observation remains clear. When large numbers of men step away from dating and family life, the demographic impact becomes visible within a generation. Japan provides a living case study. Birth rates have declined to levels once considered unimaginable. Entire prefectures report shrinking populations year after year. Economic planners adjust forecasts downward. Yet within this challenge lies an opportunity for reflection. Societies can reassess how they present relationships, how they structure work, and how they balance independence with interdependence. Perhaps the lesson is not about one gender failing the other, but about systems that have drifted out of alignment with human needs. Human beings are social by nature. Across history, communities have thrived when cooperation flourished. If modern conditions have eroded the incentives for cooperation, those conditions can be examined and revised. The alternative is quiet contraction. As Japan navigates its demographic crossroads, the rest of the world watches. Some nations are only a decade or two behind in similar trends. Fertility rates across Europe and parts of North America hover near or below replacement level. The patterns visible in Tokyo and Osaka may soon appear elsewhere. The withdrawal of men from traditional relationship roles is not a spectacle. It is a structural shift. It is visible in census data, marriage statistics, and labor force participation rates. It reshapes housing markets, education systems, and long term fiscal planning. It influences cultural narratives about purpose and adulthood. The question that remains is whether this trajectory is permanent. Demographic trends can reverse, but reversal requires both material support and renewed desire for partnership. It requires trust between men and women. It requires a cultural climate where forming a family feels hopeful rather than burdensome. In the absence of that renewal, the contraction continues. Town by town, classroom by classroom, generation by generation. A country does not disappear overnight. It fades gradually as fewer children are born and more elders pass away. The silence grows incrementally. For now, Japan stands as a vivid example of what happens when disengagement becomes widespread. The choice of individuals accumulates into national destiny. The story is still unfolding, but the current chapter is unmistakable. A shrinking population, an aging workforce, and a growing recognition that demographic momentum, once lost, is difficult to reclaim. And beneath the statistics lies a simple truth. When connection weakens, continuity falters. When partnership declines, prosperity follows. The future of any society depends not only on policy or economics, but on whether its people still choose each other. Demographic contraction does not unfold in a vacuum. It reshapes every institution that once relied on steady population growth. Consider the labor market. Japan built its post war prosperity on disciplined workforces, advanced manufacturing, and export driven industries. A shrinking youth population means fewer new entrants into those industries. Companies compete for a smaller pool of workers. Wages may rise in some sectors, yet productivity pressures intensify. Automation accelerates not simply as innovation, but as necessity. Robotics and artificial intelligence fill gaps that once would have been occupied by young employees beginning long careers. Education systems feel the change just as sharply. When fewer children are born, schools consolidate, rural campuses close entirely, teachers are reassigned or retired without replacement. The social energy of youth that once animated neighborhoods fades. Festivals that relied on young volunteers shrink in scale. Sports leagues struggle to form teams. The soundscape of daily life changes. What once echoed with children's voices becomes quieter, more subdued, more reflective of an aging society. Healthcare systems face a different kind of pressure. An aging population requires more medical attention. Chronic conditions increase, long term care facilities expand, while maternity wards contract. The ratio between working age citizens and retirees shifts dramatically. Each active worker supports a larger share of public pension and healthcare costs. Fiscal planners must adjust budgets to accommodate demographic arithmetic that grows more challenging each year. Urban and rural divides widen under these conditions. Major cities may maintain relative stability due to migration from the countryside. Rural regions, however, experience steep decline. Young adults leave for education or employment opportunities and do not return. Hey guys, in a world pushing you to own nothing and be happy, crypto is your key to survival. Join Angry's Crypto Academy to master buying, selling, and trading crypto. Make huge profits and safeguard your wealth. Plus, discover the one crypto virtually no one is talking about, poised to create new millionaires in the upcoming bull run. The link is in the description of the video below. Go check it out now. Villages that once supported multiple generations find themselves populated primarily by seniors. Empty homes accumulate. Local businesses close because customer bases evaporate. Infrastructure maintenance becomes economically inefficient when there are too few residents to justify the expense. This transformation alters cultural confidence. Nations often draw a sense of vitality from youth. Innovation, risk taking, and entrepreneurial energy are statistically concentrated among younger cohorts. When those cohorts shrink, the perception of dynamism shifts. A society may still produce technological breakthroughs, but the demographic foundation supporting widespread adoption narrows. The psychological dimension is equally important. When young people grow up in a society that openly discusses population decline, they internalize a narrative of contraction. Instead of imagining expansion, they imagine adaptation to smaller horizons. Expectations shift accordingly. Career planning may prioritize stability over growth. Personal decisions may reflect caution rather than ambition. The economic consequences ripple outward. Consumer markets depend on generational turnover. Industries tied to children and young families, such as childcare, toys, entry level housing, and early education, face contraction. Meanwhile, industries catering to seniors expand. Pharmaceutical companies, retirement communities, and elder services experience rising demand. The structure of the economy tilts toward maintenance rather than creation. Immigration presents one potential offset, yet Japan historically has maintained relatively strict immigration policies compared to some Western nations. Cultural homogeneity has been valued as a source of cohesion. Increasing immigration could supplement labor shortages, but it introduces complex debates about integration, identity, and social harmony. Policymakers must weigh demographic necessity against cultural continuity. Within this landscape, the disengagement of men from traditional partnership roles becomes a critical variable. Surveys indicating that significant percentages of men report no interest in dating cannot be dismissed as anecdotal. They signal attitudinal shifts that underlie the numbers. When men express satisfaction with solitary lifestyles, policymakers must ask what conditions would make partnership appealing again. Economic uncertainty plays a role. For decades, Japanese corporate culture emphasized lifetime employment and predictable advancement. Younger generations have encountered more precarious conditions, including temporary contracts and stagnant wages. The expectation that a husband should provide financial stability may feel daunting under such circumstances. Delaying marriage until financial readiness becomes indefinite postponement when readiness feels unattainable. Work culture itself has long been demanding. Extended hours, intense dedication to company loyalty, and limited vacation time reduce opportunities for social interaction. If professional life consumes most waking hours, forming and maintaining relationships requires energy that may be in short supply. Work reform efforts aim to improve balance, yet cultural habits shift slowly. At the same time, modern entertainment offers compelling alternatives to traditional milestones. Digital games, streaming media, online communities, and creative hobbies provide fulfillment without negotiation. The immediacy of digital gratification contrasts with the complexity of interpersonal compromise. For some men, the equation favors control and predictability over relational uncertainty. Women also navigate competing pressures. Increased educational attainment and workforce participation expand options beyond early marriage. Financial independence allows women to set higher standards for partnership. If expectations on both sides rise, while willingness to compromise declines, matching becomes more difficult. The result is not hostility, but stalemate. This stalemate has measurable consequences. Marriage rates decline, first birth ages rise, total fertility rates fall below replacement levels. Each statistical milestone represents thousands of individual decisions. Each decision feels rational at the personal level. Collectively, however, they transform national destiny. Historical context provides perspective. After the Second World War, Japan experienced rapid population growth and economic expansion. Large families were common. Children symbolized optimism and reconstruction. Over time, as prosperity increased, fertility naturally declined, a pattern observed in most developed nations. Yet Japan's decline accelerated beyond typical expectations. The cultural narrative shifted from growth to management of decline. Government initiatives have attempted to reverse course. Subsidies for childbirth, expanded parental leave, and matchmaking services reflect recognition of the crisis. Some municipalities offer financial incentives for families to relocate to rural areas. However, incentives address material barriers more effectively than emotional or psychological ones. If individuals do not desire partnership or parenthood, financial support alone may not change their minds. Social trust influences these dynamics. In societies where trust between genders remains high, courtship persists even under economic strain. Where mistrust grows, hesitation increases. Public discourse that frames relationships as transactional or adversarial can deepen reluctance. Rebuilding trust requires cultural narratives that emphasize cooperation and shared purpose. The concept of masculine identity also evolves. Traditional expectations of stoicism and provision may clash with modern economic realities. If men feel unable to meet perceived standards, withdrawal may serve as self protection. Redefining masculinity in ways that align with contemporary conditions could reduce this tension. Emphasizing emotional intelligence, shared domestic responsibility, and flexible career paths may broaden the appeal of partnership. Education systems can influence long term outcomes. Programs that teach communication skills, conflict resolution, and financial literacy prepare young adults for sustainable relationships. Without these tools, partnership may appear more daunting than liberating. Cultural institutions, media, and family role models all contribute to shaping perceptions of marriage and parenthood. It is essential to avoid fatalism. Demographic trends are powerful, but not immutable. Countries such as France have maintained relatively higher fertility rates through comprehensive family policies combined with cultural acceptance of working mothers. Scandinavian nations demonstrate that supportive childcare systems and flexible work arrangements can mitigate decline. Japan's path need not remain fixed if collective will emerges. However, demographic recovery requires time. Even if fertility rates rise tomorrow, decades would pass before age structures rebalance. Policymakers must therefore plan for both adaptation and renewal. Investment in automation, elder care infrastructure, and regional revitalization can soften immediate pressures. Simultaneously, cultural initiatives that celebrate family life without imposing rigid expectations may gradually restore enthusiasm. The broader lesson extends beyond one nation. Modern societies worldwide grapple with similar questions. As technology increases independence, how do communities preserve interdependence? As economic pressures intensify, how do individuals maintain optimism about raising children? As social media amplifies comparison, how do people sustain realistic expectations of partnership? A shrinking population alters geopolitical standing as well. Military recruitment pools narrow, domestic markets contract. Global influence may wane relative to nations with expanding populations. While economic strength depends on productivity more than sheer numbers, demographic vitality often correlates with long term influence. Yet smaller populations are not inherently negative. Environmental strain may ease, urban congestion may decrease, quality of life metrics could improve if resources are distributed efficiently. The challenge lies in managing transition rather than resisting change blindly. In examining male disengagement, it is important to recognize diversity within the category. Some men abstain from dating due to shyness or social anxiety. Others focus intensely on career advancement. Some prioritize caregiving for aging parents. Still others simply enjoy solitary pursuits. Lumping all into a single narrative oversimplifies reality. Effective responses require understanding specific motivations. Similarly, many women express frustration with modern dating environments. Concerns about compatibility, work life balance, and personal fulfillment mirror male hesitations in different forms. The issue is less about one gender rejecting the other and more about systemic conditions that discourage long term commitment. Economic modeling illustrates the stakes. Replacement level fertility typically requires around 2 children per woman. Japan's rate has fallen significantly below that threshold. When each generation is smaller than the last, exponential contraction follows. Even modest increases can stabilize the trajectory, but achieving them demands sustained effort. Cultural pride may also influence the conversation. Japan has long valued social harmony, craftsmanship, and collective discipline. Recognizing demographic vulnerability challenges national self perception, yet acknowledgement is the first step toward adaptation. Public dialogue increasingly addresses the issue with candor. Some commentators frame male withdrawal as protest against perceived social expectations. Others view it as byproduct of consumer culture that prioritizes individual pleasure. The truth likely contains elements of both. Modern life offers abundant distractions. When long term commitment competes with immediate gratification, the latter often wins. Community building initiatives may offer partial remedies. Local events that encourage social interaction, shared hobbies, and volunteer work can create organic opportunities for connection. Reintroducing communal spaces where men and women interact without transactional pressure may rebuild familiarity. Isolation thrives in fragmented environments. Community counters fragmentation. Technology itself can be harnessed constructively. While online platforms sometimes distort expectations, they also enable efficient matching and communication. Responsible design that encourages authenticity rather than superficial evaluation could reduce frustration. However, Platform incentives often prioritize engagement metrics over relational health. The generational lens reveals further complexity. Younger men who grew up amid economic uncertainty and intense digital immersion may approach relationships differently from their parents. Understanding their worldview requires empathy rather than judgment. Dismissing them as apathetic ignores structural influences that shape their choices. Policy debates increasingly consider childcare affordability, housing subsidies, and work hour regulations as components of demographic strategy. Affordable housing in urban centers can lower barriers to starting families. Predictable schedules and parental leave allow couples to balance career and parenthood. These measures address tangible obstacles that deter commitment. However, material support cannot substitute for meaning. Individuals must perceive family life as enriching rather than burdensome. Cultural storytelling plays a role. Media portrayals that depict healthy partnerships and competent parenting without caricature can shape aspirations. When narratives emphasize conflict or dissatisfaction exclusively, enthusiasm wanes. The long term trajectory of Japan will depend on its ability to align structural incentives with human desire. If men continue to opt for solitary lifestyles and women continue to delay partnership, population decline will persist. If renewed trust and shared purpose emerge, gradual stabilization may follow. Ultimately, demographic trends reflect collective values. A society that prioritizes personal autonomy above all else may accept smaller populations as trade off. A society that values continuity and generational legacy may seek active reversal. Japan stands at a crossroads between these philosophies. The unfolding reality is neither apocalyptic nor trivial. It is a slow transformation visible in census charts and daily routines. Streets once crowded with children on bicycles now host more quiet walks by retirees. Apartment complexes designed for families house single occupants. Corporate offices adapt to older workforces. Whether this path leads to sustainable equilibrium or prolonged contraction remains uncertain. What is certain is that disengagement on a large scale alters destiny. When men and women drift apart in expectations and motivation, the result appears in birth statistics within a generation. The deeper challenge lies in rebuilding a culture where partnership feels worthwhile. That requires economic reform, cultural humility, and renewed appreciation for cooperation. It requires acknowledging legitimate grievances on all sides without reducing complex trends to simple blame. As Japan continues navigating demographic headwinds, it offers a mirror for other developed nations. The questions raised by its experience are universal. How do we balance independence with intimacy? How do we sustain economic vitality amid aging populations? How do we create conditions where men and women choose each other willingly? These questions do not yield quick answers. They demand sustained reflection and coordinated action. The story is still being written, not in dramatic headlines, but in the quiet decisions of millions of individuals. Each choice shapes the arc of the nation. Another layer of this transformation becomes visible when examining social expectations around adulthood. For much of the 20th century, adulthood followed a relatively predictable sequence in Japan. Education was completed, employment secured, marriage arranged or pursued, and children welcomed soon after. The timing varied, but the structure remained familiar. Today, that sequence has fractured. Education often extends longer, employment can be unstable, marriage is delayed or dismissed, parenthood becomes optional rather than assumed. When a life script loses its default settings, individuals must design their own, and not everyone chooses to include partnership. The economic model that supported earlier generations depended on a clear division of roles. A primary earner committed to long hours while a spouse managed domestic responsibilities. As more women entered the workforce and expectations shifted toward dual income households, the structure required renegotiation. Yet corporate culture did not fully adapt. Long work hours remained common. Childcare infrastructure lagged behind demand. The result created friction. Couples who might have desired children faced logistical strain. Single individuals observing this strain may have concluded that opting out altogether was simpler. Housing patterns reflect these shifts. Urban apartments in Tokyo and other major cities are often compact and expensive. Raising multiple children in limited space can feel impractical. Rural homes may offer more room, but employment opportunities concentrate in metropolitan centers. Migration towards cities continues while birth rates decline, intensifying the spatial mismatch between family aspirations and economic realities. Financial planning has also grown more complex. Education costs remain significant. Retirement savings must stretch across longer lifespans. Younger generations witnessing economic stagnation may prioritize personal security before considering dependence. When security feels elusive, family formation moves further down the list of priorities. And a cultural narrative surrounding fulfillment have evolved as well. Achievement in career, creative expression, travel, and personal hobbies receives public celebration. Parenting, though respected, competes with numerous alternative paths to meaning. If societal recognition rewards individual accomplishment more visibly than family building, incentives subtly shift. At the same time, technology mediates intimacy in unprecedented ways. Messaging applications replace face to face conversation. Virtual reality environments simulate social presence. Artificial intelligence companions offer predictable interaction without emotional negotiation. While these tools do not replace genuine partnership, they reduce immediate feelings of isolation, making long term commitment less urgent. Men who describe themselves as content in solitude often highlight autonomy. They can allocate resources, time, and energy according to personal preference. They avoid the emotional labor of negotiation. They escape the fear of rejection or conflict. From an individual standpoint, these benefits are tangible. From a demographic standpoint, widespread adoption of such a lifestyle compounds decline. The social safety net influences decision making as well. Japan maintains robust healthcare and public services. Elder care, though strained, is structured. Individuals may perceive less necessity to rely on children for support in old age compared to pre modern societies. When survival in later years does not depend on offspring, the incentive to have them diminishes. There is also the issue of matchmaking culture. Traditional introductions through family or community have weakened. Corporate environments once facilitated social interaction among colleagues who later married. As employment structures diversify and gig work expands, these organic meeting grounds shrink. Digital matchmaking attempts to fill the gap, yet algorithmic sorting can intensify superficial criteria, narrowing rather than broadening possibilities. Expectations surrounding compatibility may have risen alongside education levels. Individuals seek partners who align with lifestyle preferences, intellectual interests, and financial goals. Higher standards are not inherently negative, but when combined with reluctance to compromise, they reduce match rates. If the search for ideal alignment overrides willingness to grow together, delay becomes indefinite. Masculine socialization patterns warrant attention. Boys who grow up observing high pressure corporate environments and limited paternal presence may internalize ambivalence about repeating that model. If they associate adulthood with exhaustion rather than fulfillment, they may seek alternative routes. The image of the overworked salaryman remains powerful in Japanese cultural memory. Younger men may interpret withdrawal as liberation rather than failure. Similarly, women who witnessed previous generations balancing work and domestic expectations without adequate support may hesitate to embrace traditional motherhood roles. Career ambitions and personal development compete with biological timelines. If supportive structures are insufficient, postponement becomes rational. Population aging introduces another dimension. As the median age rises, the ratio of older voters increases. Political priorities may tilt toward pension stability and healthcare funding rather than family expansion. Resource allocation reflects demographic composition, creating a feedback loop where policies favor current majorities over future generations. Environmental considerations occasionally surface in discussions about declining birth rates. Some argue that smaller populations reduce ecological strain. Urban planners consider how to repurpose unused infrastructure. However, environmental benefits do not automatically compensate for economic contraction. Balanced population levels often provide resilience against external shocks. The cultural concept of ikigai, often translated as a reason for being, intersects with this conversation. For some, career mastery or artistic pursuit fulfills that purpose. For others, family life anchors meaning. When more individuals locate their ikigai outside parenthood, fertility declines naturally. Encouraging family life as one valid path among many may prove more effective than framing it as obligation. Corporate reform could influence long term outcomes. Flexible schedules, remote work options, and reduced overtime could make relationship building more feasible. Some companies have begun experimenting with shorter work weeks and parental leave expansions. Cultural acceptance of these changes, however, takes time. Public spaces designed for interaction matter as well. Parks, community centers, and cultural festivals create low pressure environments for connection. Urban design that prioritizes communal gathering over isolation may subtly encourage relationship formation. When daily life routes individuals from private apartment to workplace to digital entertainment, opportunities for organic meeting decrease. The psychological impact of economic headlines should not be underestimated. Continuous reporting on stagnation, debt levels, and demographic crisis can foster pessimism. Pessimism reduces willingness to invest emotionally in the future. If the future appears uncertain or diminished, raising children feels risky. International comparisons provide additional insight. South Korea faces similar fertility challenges despite different cultural nuances. European nations with extensive welfare systems still struggle to reach replacement levels. The phenomenon reflects broader modernization patterns rather than unique national failings. Understanding common factors may yield collaborative solutions. Education about healthy relationships could begin earlier. Schools often focus on academic achievement while leaving interpersonal skills to chance. Structured programs that teach empathy, communication, and realistic expectations might prepare young adults for partnership. Preventing disillusionment before it forms could change trajectories. Media representation plays a powerful role. Dramas and films that portray relationships as sources of growth rather than perpetual conflict can shape perceptions. Balanced narratives acknowledging challenges while highlighting rewards may influence cultural imagination more effectively than policy pamphlets. It is also important to recognize the resilience within Japanese society. Communities adapt creatively. Some rural towns offer free housing to young families willing to relocate. Others sponsor festivals celebrating family life. Grassroots initiatives sometimes succeed where national campaigns struggle. Economic diversification may create new opportunities. Emerging industries such as renewable energy, biotechnology, and digital services could provide stable employment for younger cohorts. Stability often precedes willingness to commit to long term partnership. The intersection of gender expectations and economic capacity remains central. If both men and women expect high standards of living before considering marriage, delayed timelines follow. Adjusting expectations toward gradual growth rather than immediate perfection might reopen pathways. Civic engagement could strengthen intergenerational solidarity. Programs that connect seniors with youth for mentorship or childcare support build mutual investment. When older citizens actively support family formation, cultural momentum shifts. Philosophically, the question arises whether societies must maintain constant growth to remain healthy. Some argue that sustainable equilibrium at lower population levels is possible. Yet abrupt decline disrupts systems built for expansion. Managing gradual stabilization differs from confronting rapid contraction. Religious and spiritual communities sometimes encourage family formation through shared values. Japan's religious landscape is diverse, yet generally secular in daily practice. Strengthening community bonds around shared ethical commitments might indirectly influence demographic behavior. Entrepreneurship among youth could inject optimism. When young adults feel empowered to create businesses and shape markets, confidence about supporting families increases. Government programs supporting startups and reducing regulatory burden may have demographic side effects beyond economic metrics. Healthcare policies related to fertility treatments and reproductive support also factor into outcomes. Access to affordable fertility services can help couples who delay childbearing due to career pressures. However, treatment cannot compensate entirely for late starts. The conversation ultimately circles back to desire. Demography responds to the aggregated desires of millions. Structural reforms can lower obstacles, but without renewed enthusiasm for partnership, change remains limited. Cultivating that enthusiasm requires cultural storytelling, economic confidence, and restored trust. Japan's experience challenges assumptions about inevitability. Technological advancement alone does not guarantee demographic vitality. Wealth does not automatically translate into higher birth rates. In fact, prosperity often correlates with decline unless balanced by supportive structures. As the years progress, data will reveal whether current initiatives alter the slope. Small increases in fertility would signal stabilization. Continued decline would confirm deep rooted transformation. Observers across the globe monitor these indicators closely. In the meantime, daily life continues. Elderly residents tend gardens in towns where playgrounds sit unused. Young professionals navigate crowded trains yet return to quiet apartments. Policymakers debate budgets. Economists publish projections. Beneath it all, the fundamental equation persists. Connection sustains continuity. Disconnection reduces it. Reimagining a social contract that values both autonomy and commitment may hold the key. Encouraging men to see partnership not as burden, but as shared strength could counter withdrawal. Empowering women to pursue career and family without sacrificing either could restore balance. Achieving both simultaneously requires deliberate coordination. No single reform will reverse decades of trend. Incremental change across workplaces, housing markets, education systems, and cultural narratives may gradually alter expectations. Patience is essential. Demographic recovery unfolds over generations, not election cycles, and Japan stands at the forefront of this challenge, yet it is not alone. Its journey offers lessons in humility and foresight. The numbers tell a story, but beneath them lie human choices shaped by context. Altering context alters choice. Whether the future holds stabilization or continued contraction depends on the interplay between structure and sentiment. If structural barriers fall and sentiment shifts toward cooperation, renewal becomes possible. If not, Adaptation to smaller scale becomes the path forward. The outcome remains unwritten. What is certain is that demographic patterns reflect collective priorities. When a society values and facilitates partnership, birth rates respond. When obstacles accumulate and trust erodes, withdrawal spreads. The trajectory of Japan underscores the power of these dynamics, reminding the world that continuity is not automatic. It is chosen, sustained, and renewed by each generation. Conflict avoidance can subtly reshape entire generations. When preserving personal tranquility becomes a dominant value, individuals may steer away from situations that carry the potential for disagreement, compromise, or emotional intensity. Long term relationships inevitably involve negotiation. They demand patience, resilience, and the willingness to endure discomfort in pursuit of shared growth. If cultural messaging constantly elevates individual calm above collective endurance, then the appetite for enduring relational friction diminishes. In that environment, solitude appears stable and predictable, while partnership appears volatile. Another contributing factor lies in the transformation of aspiration itself. Earlier generations often defined success through family continuity and contribution to the next generation. Modern aspiration frequently centers on personal fulfillment, professional recognition, and experiential richness. Neither framework is inherently flawed, but they yield different demographic outcomes. When self realization takes precedence over generational extension, fertility rates adjust accordingly. The shift is subtle, not announced in dramatic slogans, but visible in patterns of delay and hesitation. Digital economies amplify this transformation by enabling income generation without physical community. Remote work, online entrepreneurship, and content creation allow individuals to build livelihoods from private spaces. Economic independence no longer requires deep integration into local networks. As physical presence becomes optional, so too can relational engagement. Work that once facilitated office friendships and eventual romantic introductions now unfolds through screens, reducing incidental human contact. Mental health awareness has rightly increased in recent decades, yet it has also altered the language of compatibility. Terms such as emotional safety, trauma awareness, and boundaries frame relationships within therapeutic vocabulary. While these concepts promote healthier dynamics, they can also raise entry barriers. If individuals feel compelled to resolve all internal struggles before entering partnership, many may postpone indefinitely. The pursuit of personal wholeness can paradoxically delay collective wholeness. Generational narratives around independence have also evolved. Young adults are encouraged to explore identity, travel widely, and cultivate personal passions before committing. This exploration phase often extends well into the 30s. As biological windows narrow, the feasibility of larger families decreases. The original intention of self discovery yields unintended demographic contraction. Consumer infrastructure supports solitary living efficiently. Single occupancy apartments, meal delivery services, entertainment subscriptions, and personal fitness regimes cater to individual lifestyles. Economies adapt to meet demand. As markets profit from independence, structural incentives to encourage partnership weaken. Financial ecosystems align with prevailing behavior, reinforcing it further. Cultural depictions of marriage sometimes emphasize loss of freedom rather than expansion of purpose. Comedic portrayals often frame spouses as constraints rather than collaborators. While humor serves its function, repeated messaging influences perception. If partnership is subconsciously associated with restriction, motivation declines. The interplay between aging parents and adult children introduces additional complexity. In societies with rapidly aging populations, middle aged adults may devote significant time to elder care. The energy required to support aging relatives can limit capacity for raising children simultaneously. Known as the sandwich generation phenomenon, in some contexts, this dual responsibility compresses personal bandwidth. Observing this strain, younger individuals may hesitate to initiate similar cycles. Economic inequality also shapes reproductive decisions. If wealth concentrates among certain sectors while wages stagnate elsewhere, perceptions of unfair opportunity increase. Individuals uncertain about upward mobility may defer family formation until prospects improve. Prolonged deferral gradually transforms into permanent abstention. Migration patterns further influence community stability. Young adults relocating frequently for employment disrupt long-term social bonds. Without consistent local networks, forming lasting relationships becomes more challenging. Frequent relocation prioritizes adaptability over rootedness, and rootedness often supports family life. Educational intensity plays a role as well. Competitive academic environments extend youth focus on achievement. High expectations for entrance exams, professional credentials, and skill acquisition delay entry into stable employment. As educational milestones extend, family milestones compress into later years, reducing total fertility potential. There is also the phenomenon of selective partnership. As educational attainment rises, individuals often seek partners with comparable credentials. While reasonable, this narrowing of acceptable matches reduces pool size. If both genders concentrate on similar high status criteria, many may remain unmatched despite mutual interest. Urban loneliness presents another paradox. High population density does not guarantee connection. Individuals may coexist physically while remaining socially isolated. Large cities offer anonymity that can both liberate and detach. Without deliberate effort, isolation persists even amid crowds. Public discourse around gender roles continues to evolve. Efforts to dismantle restrictive expectations have produced necessary progress, yet transitional phases can generate uncertainty. When traditional scripts dissolve before new ones solidify, ambiguity prevails. Ambiguity may stall action as individuals hesitate to engage without clear frameworks. Economic productivity metrics often overshadow well being metrics in policy conversations. Governments track growth rates and labor participation, but emotional fulfillment receives less institutional attention. If policies prioritize output over relational health, cultural signals may unintentionally favor work over family. The intersection of technology and intimacy warrants deeper consideration. Algorithms optimize for engagement, not for lasting bonds. Dating platforms emphasize rapid evaluation through images and brief descriptions. Swiping mechanisms encourage disposability rather than deliberation. While these tools expand reach, they can undermine patience. Financial instruments related to housing also shape outcomes. Mortgages require long term commitment to specific locations. In uncertain job markets, young adults hesitate to assume such obligations. Without home ownership, the psychological foundation for family life may feel less stable. Societal narratives about climate uncertainty and global instability can dampen optimism. News cycles highlight environmental risks, geopolitical tensions, and economic fluctuations. If the future appears unpredictable, raising children may feel ethically or practically questionable. Restoring confidence in collective resilience could influence personal decisions. The influence of extended adolescence manifests in cultural consumption. Entertainment industries target adults with youth oriented products and experiences. Nostalgia, markets thrive. When adulthood retains youthful aesthetics and freedoms, the perceived urgency to transition into parental roles diminishes. Financial literacy education may also impact decisions. Understanding long term planning, investment growth, and resource management can reduce fear surrounding family expenses. Without clear financial knowledge, cost projections may appear overwhelming. Civic rituals that once reinforced generational continuity have weakened in some contexts. Community ceremonies celebrating marriage and childbirth served as public affirmations of shared values. As participation declines, symbolic reinforcement fades. Workplace cultures that penalize parental leave discourage participation. If career advancement stalls due to family commitments, rational actors may avoid those commitments. Aligning career trajectories with family life remains essential for demographic stability. The role of male friendship networks deserves attention. In environments where men cultivate deep peer bonds, emotional support may not require romantic partnership. While healthy friendships are positive, they can satisfy certain social needs that historically motivated marriage. Meanwhile, female professional communities offer similar support structures. When emotional and economic independence converge, reliance on partnership for stability decreases. Autonomy becomes not just possible but comfortable. Government messaging about demographic decline often relies on statistics rather than storytelling. While numbers communicate urgency, they rarely inspire desire. Crafting narratives that celebrate family as meaningful adventure rather than obligation could shift perception. Intergenerational housing models offer potential solutions. Co-living arrangements that combine seniors and young families distribute responsibilities and reduce isolation. Architectural innovation can foster cooperation. Entrepreneurial culture among older adults also influences demographic health. If retirees remain economically active, burden on younger generations decreases, potentially easing anxiety about future obligations. Healthcare advancements that improve maternal and paternal health at later ages may expand feasible timelines, yet biological limitations remain. Public education about realistic fertility windows could inform decisions without inducing panic. Transportation infrastructure influences geographic flexibility. Efficient regional transit could allow families to reside in affordable areas while accessing urban employment. Reducing commute strain enhances work life balance. Artistic expression, reflecting contemporary family models, may normalize diverse pathways. Inclusive portrayals acknowledging non traditional structures while emphasizing commitment can broaden appeal. Philanthropic initiatives focused on family support can supplement public programs. Community funded childcare cooperatives and mentorship networks reduce barriers. Corporate leadership modeling balanced lifestyles sets powerful examples. Executives who visibly prioritize family without sacrificing professional excellence challenge false dichotomies. Public recognition of caregiving as valuable labor could shift cultural attitudes. When caregiving receives social prestige comparable to corporate achievement, incentives rebalance. The complexity of these intertwined factors underscores that demographic transformation is systemic rather than singular. No isolated cause explains the shift. Economic conditions, cultural narratives, technological mediation, psychological trends, and policy frameworks intersect continuously. Despite the magnitude of change, adaptability remains human strength. Societies have navigated industrial revolutions, wars, and economic crises. Demographic adjustment presents different but manageable challenges if addressed thoughtfully. Future strategies may integrate cross sector collaboration. Urban planners, educators, business leaders, healthcare providers, and cultural creators share responsibility. Aligning efforts across domains increases likelihood of meaningful impact. Long-term thinking must replace short-term metrics. Demographic stability requires patience beyond electoral cycles and quarterly reports. Investment in children today yields dividends decades later. Cultural humility remains vital. Blaming individuals for rational responses to structural conditions obscures systemic reform. Understanding lived realities fosters constructive solutions. Ultimately, the trajectory of population trends reflects collective imagination about the future. If communities cultivate hope, trust, and shared purpose, individuals may choose partnership more readily. If cynicism prevails, withdrawal persists. The story unfolding in Japan illustrates how modern prosperity can coexist with demographic vulnerability. It reveals that comfort does not automatically translate into continuity. It invites deeper reflection on what sustains societies beyond material wealth. Continuity is not guaranteed by technology nor secured by past achievements. It is maintained through intentional cooperation between men and women who see value in building something larger than themselves. When that vision dims, statistics follow. Renewal requires more than incentives. It requires belief that shared life enhances individual life. Reestablishing that belief may be the most important task of all. Beyond economics and culture lies the subtle architecture of expectation that forms during adolescence. The stories young people absorb about what adulthood looks like shape their eventual decisions. When classrooms, media, and peer groups emphasize independence without equally emphasizing interdependence, the mental blueprint shifts. If the anticipated future centers on self directed goals rather than shared endeavors, partnership becomes an optional accessory rather than a central pillar. Over time, optional elements are easier to discard when circumstances become complicated. Another dimension involves how societies define success across different stages of life. In many professional environments, early career years demand relentless focus. Advancement requires geographic mobility, extended hours, and constant skill development. This intensity coincides with prime years for forming relationships and starting families. When professional structures reward singular devotion during this window, individuals internalize the trade off. Even those who value family may delay until career stabilization, only to discover that stability is elusive. Financial instruments designed for risk mitigation also influence perception. Insurance markets, retirement accounts, and long term savings plans prioritize individual accumulation. While prudent, this framing reinforces personal security as primary objective. Collective security through family networks becomes secondary in strategic planning. The psychological shift from family as economic unit to individual as economic unit has deep consequences for fertility behavior. The transformation of leisure culture adds further complexity. Past generations often spent free time within multi generational households or community gatherings. Contemporary leisure frequently unfolds in individualized formats such as streaming media, solo travel, and personalized fitness regimes. These experiences provide satisfaction without requiring compromise. When leisure habits reinforce autonomy, integrating another person into daily rhythms can feel disruptive. Language surrounding relationships has evolved as well. Concepts such as emotional labor, personal growth, and self optimization shape expectations. Individuals seek partnerships that enhance existing trajectories rather than reshape them. If a potential relationship introduces friction or demands adjustment, withdrawal may seem rational. Growth through shared adversity becomes less attractive than uninterrupted personal progression. Economic models also reflect demographic change. As markets anticipate fewer children, industries shift accordingly. Investment flows toward elder care, automation, and luxury goods targeted at adults without dependence. This economic realignment can normalize smaller families, reinforcing expectations through advertising and product design. Interpersonal vulnerability presents another barrier. In highly competitive societies, displaying emotional need may feel risky. If individuals fear appearing weak or dependent, they may avoid intimate bonds that expose those dimensions. Solitude protects image control. Partnership exposes imperfection. Cultural attitudes toward vulnerability, therefore, influence demographic outcomes in subtle ways. Urban housing policy intersects with these dynamics. Zoning laws that favor small units over family sized dwellings signal anticipated household composition. When developers prioritize studio apartments and one-bedroom units, they respond to market demand while simultaneously shaping it. Availability of family friendly housing affects feasibility of raising children in urban centers. The pace of technological change can create generational disconnects. Rapid innovation fosters adaptability, but also instability. If young adults feel that future careers may be obsolete within decades, planning for long term family commitments appears uncertain. Predictability supports reproduction, perceived volatility discourages it. Public discourse around equality and fairness has reshaped relationship negotiations. Expectations of shared domestic responsibility and dual career support reflect progress, yet they require practical implementation. Without supportive infrastructure such as affordable childcare and flexible work arrangements, ideals remain difficult to operationalize. The resulting gap between aspiration and reality generates frustration. Cultural attitudes toward singlehood have softened considerably. Remaining unmarried no longer carries the stigma it once did. While this reduces harmful pressure, it also removes a motivator for partnership. The normalization of permanent single status changes the calculus of decision making. Individuals may choose independence without fear of social marginalization. Healthcare advancements and reproductive technology can create false security. Awareness of assisted reproductive options may encourage delay, yet success rates decline with age. When expectations exceed biological probabilities, disappointment follows. Transparent education about realistic timelines could influence earlier decisions. The emotional experience of community fragmentation also deserves attention. As neighborhoods become more transient, long term familiarity diminishes. Trust builds over repeated interaction. Without it, forming intimate bonds requires additional effort. Social capital erodes quietly when turnover accelerates. Workplace hierarchies historically provided mentorship that extended beyond professional advice. Senior colleagues introduced younger employees to broader social circles, including potential partners. As corporate structures flatten or decentralize, these mentorship channels weaken, reducing informal matchmaking opportunities. Cultural exportation plays a role as well. Global media disseminates diverse lifestyle models. Exposure to alternative paths broadens imagination, but may dilute local traditions that supported family formation. Hybrid identities emerge, combining global individualism with local expectations, sometimes creating tension. The interplay between economic policy and family taxation can also influence behavior. Tax codes that treat individuals and households differently send signals about societal priorities. Incentives aligned with family stability can encourage commitment, while neutral or individual focused systems may inadvertently favor independence. Public transportation infrastructure affects daily rhythms. Lengthy commutes reduce time available for nurturing relationships. Policies that decentralize employment hubs or encourage mixed use neighborhoods can increase time spent within communities. fostering connection. Cultural rituals marking transitions into adulthood have diminished in some contexts. Ceremonies once signaled readiness for responsibility. Without clear rites of passage, adulthood can feel indefinite. Indefiniteness delays assumption of long term commitments. Economic narratives emphasizing productivity above all else may unintentionally devalue caregiving. When caregiving labor lacks recognition in national accounts, its importance can be overlooked in policy debates. Elevating caregiving as essential infrastructure may reframe priorities. Peer comparison regarding financial milestones influences partnership decisions. Social media showcases weddings, homes, and lifestyles that may exceed average means. Individuals reluctant to commit without replicating perceived standards postpone engagement. Simplifying expectations could alleviate pressure. Mental health challenges such as anxiety and depression can reduce energy for pursuing relationships. Societal stressors contribute to these conditions. Expanding accessible mental health services may indirectly support demographic resilience. Educational institutions might incorporate practical relationship skills alongside academic curricula. Communication training, conflict resolution workshops, and financial planning seminars prepare students for sustainable partnerships. Proactive preparation reduces fear of unknown dynamics. Corporate metrics measuring employee satisfaction could include work life integration indicators. Organizations that track and improve these measures signal commitment to holistic well being, potentially influencing life decisions. Immigration policy discussions often focus on economic impact, yet, social integration programs determine long term success. Welcoming diverse families could offset demographic decline, while enriching cultural landscape provided integration is thoughtful. Cultural humility and public dialogue is essential. Simplistic narratives attributing demographic shifts to singular causes obscure complexity. Constructive conversation requires acknowledging multiple interacting forces. Youth empowerment initiatives can rebuild optimism. When young adults participate in civic planning, entrepreneurship, and community design, they gain stake in collective future. Ownership fosters willingness to invest personally through family formation. Environmental design of childcare facilities matters as well. Accessible, high quality childcare reduces career family trade offs. Investment in early childhood infrastructure signals societal support for parenting. Intergenerational storytelling preserves continuity. Elders sharing experiences of resilience and partnership can inspire younger cohorts. Structured programs facilitating such exchange strengthen social bonds. Media campaigns that celebrate balanced lifestyles rather than extreme individualism may recalibrate expectations. Highlighting examples of couples navigating careers and parenting successfully counters narratives of incompatibility. Economic resilience planning should integrate demographic projections. Infrastructure built for shrinking populations differs from that built for growth. Adaptive planning reduces shock. Cultural festivals centered on family traditions can reinforce positive associations. Community events celebrating generational continuity create visible affirmation. Academic research exploring motivations behind male disengagement can inform targeted interventions. Understanding nuanced reasons rather than relying on stereotypes enables precision. Legal frameworks surrounding parental leave for both mothers and fathers influence participation. When fathers take leave without career penalty, partnership equality strengthens. The influence of grandparents in childcare arrangements can lower costs and enhance emotional support. Policies encouraging proximity housing may facilitate such arrangements. Volunteer networks supporting new parents reduce isolation. Peer groups sharing experiences normalize challenges. Technological innovation in remote healthcare for expectant mothers and young children can ease logistical burdens, particularly in rural regions. Housing cooperatives designed for young families could distribute financial risk. Shared amenities reduce individual expense. Cultural acknowledgement of diverse family forms ensures inclusivity while maintaining emphasis on commitment and responsibility. Long-term demographic modeling can guide university enrollment planning, labor training programs, and pension reforms, aligning education output with projected workforce needs. Public discourse emphasizing shared destiny rather than generational blame fosters solidarity. Framing demographic challenge as collective responsibility encourages cooperation. Incentivizing corporate relocation to rural areas might redistribute employment, revitalizing communities and creating family friendly environments. Encouraging arts programs that explore themes of connection and continuity can shape cultural imagination subtly but powerfully. Transparent communication from policymakers about realistic challenges and achievable goals builds trust. Overstated promises erode credibility. Regional collaboration among nations facing similar fertility challenges could facilitate exchange of best practices. Finally, cultivating a cultural ethos that honors both independence and interdependence may restore equilibrium. Autonomy need not exclude partnership. Professional achievement need not preclude parenthood. Framing these elements as complementary rather than competing could shift collective perception. Demographic trajectories evolve gradually yet decisively. Every structural reform, cultural shift, and personal choice contributes incrementally. The path forward depends on whether societies consciously align incentives with desired outcomes or allow momentum to continue unchecked. Japan's situation illustrates the delicate balance between prosperity and continuity. It demonstrates that social cohesion cannot be assumed in perpetuity. Renewal demands intention. As discussions continue across academic, political, and community spheres, one principle stands out. Human connection remains foundational. Systems thrive when individuals see value in investing beyond themselves. When that investment falters, institutions strain. The future will be shaped not only by policy adjustments, but by cultural narratives that inspire cooperation. If men and women envision shared life as opportunity rather than obligation, demographic stabilization becomes attainable. If isolation remains preferable, contraction persists. The unfolding chapter invites careful reflection. Societies that adapt thoughtfully can transform challenge into renewal. Those that ignore underlying causes may face prolonged adjustment. The choice rests within collective will and individual conviction, intertwined in the quiet arithmetic of everyday decisions. Beneath structural incentives and cultural narratives lies a more elemental question about meaning. In eras defined by hardship, meaning often emerged from necessity. Families were formed because survival demanded cooperation. Children were raised because labor required many hands. Modern prosperity has removed much of that compulsion. Survival no longer depends on large households. Comfort can be achieved alone. When necessity fades, meaning must be chosen consciously. If societies do not articulate compelling reasons for generational continuity beyond obligation, individuals may default to self sufficiency. The psychology of abundance contributes to this dynamic. When options multiply, commitment becomes more difficult. Endless streams of entertainment, career pathways, travel destinations, and personal projects create a landscape of perpetual possibility. Selecting one path, particularly one as binding as parenthood, requires closing others. For individuals conditioned to keep options open, that closure feels costly. As long as alternatives remain enticing, postponement feels safer than finality. Another underexplored element is the erosion of shared hardship. Shared hardship historically forged bonds. Communities rebuilt after disasters, Families navigated scarcity together, and collective struggle strengthened solidarity. In relative comfort, the unifying force of adversity weakens. Without shared trials, motivations to build enduring alliances may soften. Comfort can paradoxically reduce cohesion. Educational specialization further shapes identity. As individuals pursue highly focused academic tracks, social circles narrow around professional peers. Cross sectional community interaction declines. Homogeneity within networks can limit exposure to diverse relationship possibilities. Broader social mixing once facilitated unexpected connections that led to partnership. Cultural attitudes toward sacrifice have also evolved. Earlier generations often accepted sacrifice as intrinsic to adulthood. Contemporary discourse emphasizes minimizing discomfort and maximizing personal satisfaction. While self care is valuable, equating sacrifice with failure may undermine willingness to invest in long term commitments that require compromise. The concept of legacy has shifted as well. In previous centuries, legacy was embodied through descendants who carried forward family names and traditions. Today, legacy can be digital, professional, or creative. Individuals may seek permanence through published work, entrepreneurial ventures, or online presence. These alternative forms of continuity compete with biological legacy. Economic concentration in urban centers generates hyper competitive dating environments. Large populations increase choice, but also comparison. When individuals perceive constant access to potentially superior options, satisfaction declines. Commitment may feel premature when perceived alternatives abound. Legal structures regarding marriage and divorce influence risk assessment. If dissolution appears financially or emotionally costly, some may avoid entry altogether. Simplifying legal processes while supporting mediation could reduce perceived barriers. The cultural narrative around aging intersects with demographic choices. Societies that marginalize older adults may inadvertently discourage younger generations from envisioning parenthood as meaningful. If aging is framed negatively, producing future generations to share that trajectory may seem less appealing. Public health messaging about population decline often emphasizes crisis. While urgency is important, excessive alarm can breed paralysis. Balanced communication highlighting both challenges and opportunities may foster proactive engagement. The role of extended family networks deserves renewed attention. In environments where grandparents live nearby and participate in childcare, parental burdens lighten. Geographic mobility that separates generations increases isolation and cost. Technology's impact on attention spans also influences relational capacity. Constant digital stimulation may reduce patience for slow building bonds. Relationships require sustained focus. If attention fragments easily, perseverance diminishes. Societal trust in institutions correlates with willingness to invest in future generations. When citizens trust governance, education systems, and healthcare infrastructure, they feel confident raising children within them. Erosion of trust discourages long term planning. The aesthetics of adulthood have changed. Youth culture influences fashion, entertainment, and even workplace norms. If adulthood lacks distinct markers of prestige, transitions blur. Parenthood once symbolized maturity and respect. If that symbolism fades, motivation may decline. Economic models rewarding short term shareholder returns over long term community investment may indirectly influence family decisions. When corporate strategies prioritize immediate profit, work stability can suffer, affecting personal planning. Public recognition of fathers' roles in nurturing can reshape masculine identity. Celebrating engaged fatherhood counters outdated stereotypes and broadens aspirational models. Urban green spaces designed for families encourage visible presence of children, reinforcing normalcy. When public environments rarely feature children, their absence becomes self perpetuating. Cultural humility in addressing gender dynamics remains essential. Simplistic blame narratives exacerbate division. Constructive dialogue acknowledges both male and female perspectives without antagonism. The digital archiving of personal experiences may alter perception of continuity. If memories are stored online indefinitely, the urgency to pass stories through generations lessens. Technological permanence competes with familial transmission. Economic education around shared budgeting and cooperative financial planning could demystify family costs. Transparency reduces exaggerated fears. Workplace mentorship programs connecting young employees with older colleagues who balanced career and family successfully can provide tangible examples. Creative industries possess influence in shaping aspiration. Storylines that depict multi generational households thriving together may inspire imagination. International exchange programs exposing young adults to cultures with stronger family integration could broaden perspectives. Flexible educational pathways allowing parents to continue skill development after childbirth reduce perceived trade offs. Civic awards recognizing community parenting contributions elevate social prestige associated with family life. Transportation subsidies for families commuting from affordable regions to employment hubs could alleviate housing pressure. Mental resilience training integrated into school curricula prepares future adults for relational challenges. Economic diversification into sectors compatible with family friendly schedules enhances feasibility. Public art celebrating generational continuity embeds values within everyday landscapes. Long term urban planning that anticipates demographic shifts prevents abrupt infrastructure mismatch. Transparent demographic dashboards, accessible to citizens, encourage informed participation in policy discussions. Encouraging interfaith and intercultural dialogue around family values may reveal shared priorities. Philanthropic investment in early childhood research underscores societal commitment to future generations. Corporate sponsorship of community childcare initiatives distributes responsibility beyond government. Cultural reframing of compromise as strength rather than concession may restore appreciation for partnership dynamics. Promotion of volunteer fatherhood and mentorship for youth lacking parental presence strengthens social fabric. Public campaigns highlighting the joys of mentorship, teaching, and nurturing can resonate even among those uncertain about parenthood. Academic research examining correlation between housing affordability and fertility informs zoning reform. Collaborative storytelling projects where families document multi generational histories preserve continuity narratives. Economic incentives for companies that maintain family supportive policies could encourage broader adoption. Encouraging micro communities within large cities fosters belonging and interaction. Recognition of caregiving in pension calculations validates unpaid labor. Integration of financial planning tools into dating platforms could facilitate realistic discussions early in relationships. Community resilience programs preparing neighborhoods for emergencies strengthen solidarity, indirectly supporting family confidence. Public libraries hosting parenting workshops and relationship seminars serve as accessible resources. Urban agriculture initiatives connecting families to shared projects cultivate community bonds. Scholarships supporting students from larger families could offset perceived cost disadvantages. Cross generational housing tax incentives may encourage proximity. Encouraging part time work options without career penalty broadens flexibility. Public recognition of companies with exemplary parental support practices sets competitive standards. Inclusion of relationship literacy in corporate training acknowledges its relevance to workplace harmony. Civic dialogue platforms allowing young adults to voice concerns about family formation ensure policies reflect lived reality. Investment in arts education, emphasizing collaboration, cultivates cooperative skills from early age. Exploration of shorter standard work weeks could recalibrate work life balance nationwide. Transparent evaluation of demographic policies with measurable outcomes maintains accountability. Promotion of outdoor family oriented cultural festivals fosters visible celebration. Expansion of telemedicine for prenatal and pediatric care reduces logistical barriers. Encouragement of cooperative childcare models within apartment complexes leverages proximity. Academic partnerships between demographers and urban designers integrate insights across disciplines. Public discussion acknowledging uncertainty while affirming collective agency can replace fatalism. Celebrating narratives of couples who navigated modern challenges successfully provides relatable inspiration. Reevaluating tax structures that inadvertently penalize dual income families may remove hidden disincentives. Promotion of financial products designed for young families with flexible terms can reduce anxiety. Community mentoring networks pairing new parents with experienced ones ease transition. Integration of sustainability initiatives with family planning discourse reframes continuity as environmental stewardship. Encouraging businesses to adopt predictable scheduling reduces stress. Public discourse that frames children as contributors to societal vitality rather than solely as dependents alters perspective. Youth leadership programs empowering adolescents to envision their role in future society instill long term orientation. Recognizing emotional intelligence as professional asset links relational skills with career success. Encouraging intercompany collaboration on parental support standards prevents race to bottom. Urban planning that incorporates family friendly recreational facilities into high density areas counters spatial constraints. Promotion of shared meal culture within communities rebuilds social fabric. Transparent national dialogue about demographic realities fosters shared responsibility rather than secrecy. Finally, sustaining hope remains fundamental. Societies that believe in their capacity to adapt are more likely to do so. Demographic shifts, while powerful, are not destiny carved in stone. They respond to culture, policy, and collective imagination. Japan's ongoing journey demonstrates that modernity brings both liberation and complexity. Independence expands possibilities, yet continuity requires commitment. Balancing these forces demands intentional effort. The quiet decisions of millions accumulate into visible trends. Each conversation about partnership, each policy adjustment, each cultural narrative contributes incrementally. Whether contraction continues or renewal emerges depends on the alignment of values with structures. Continuity flourishes where cooperation feels worthwhile. When men and women perceive shared life as enriching rather than burdensome, the arithmetic of population shifts. The path forward remains open, shaped not by inevitability, but by the choices societies are willing to make together. At some point, the discussion must confront the emotional atmosphere that surrounds modern courtship. Numbers explain outcomes, but atmosphere shapes behavior. In many advanced societies, the emotional climate around relationships has grown cautious. People speak about dating as a market, as a negotiation, as an exchange of value. When language shifts from connection to transaction, psychology follows. If individuals begin to see themselves as commodities competing for ranking rather than as partners seeking mutual growth, enthusiasm declines. Competition breeds evaluation. Evaluation breeds anxiety. Anxiety discourages risk. Risk is essential to intimacy. Approaching someone, expressing interest, investing time, and committing to shared plans all involve vulnerability. When public culture amplifies the cost of missteps, even minor social errors can feel catastrophic. Viral embarrassment, reputational damage, and digital permanence raise stakes beyond previous generations' experience. A single awkward moment can be captured, shared, and replayed. Under such conditions, opting out becomes understandable. Withdrawal feels safer than exposure. The rise of performance identity intensifies this effect. Social media encourages constant curation of image. Individuals present idealized versions of themselves, filtered and refined. Maintaining that presentation requires control. Intimate relationships, however, dissolve control. They reveal flaws, habits, and imperfections. If self image is carefully constructed, inviting someone into unfiltered reality threatens that construction. Independence preserves narrative authority. Partnership complicates it. Another factor is the transformation of patience. Digital platforms train users to expect immediate responses and rapid gratification. Messages arrive instantly. Entertainment loads without delay. Algorithms anticipate preference. In contrast, building a relationship unfolds slowly. Trust develops through repetition. Misunderstandings require time to resolve. If patience weakens, perseverance weakens with it. The slower rhythm of intimacy feels incompatible with the accelerated tempo of digital life. The economics of attention further complicate matters. Individuals are bombarded with options, notifications, and invitations. Attention becomes fragmented. Meaningful relationships demand sustained focus. When focus splinters across dozens of stimuli, depth diminishes. Surface level interaction may proliferate while deep bonds decline. Fertility statistics reflect depth rather than breadth. Cultural discourse around independence often frames reliance as weakness. Terms like self made, self sufficient, and self reliant dominate aspirational language. While autonomy is valuable, complete self containment contradicts the interdependent nature of family life. If dependency is stigmatized, asking for support within partnership feels uncomfortable. People retreat to environments where reliance is unnecessary. Economic planning in uncertain times also encourages hedging. Individuals diversify investments to reduce exposure. Applied to relationships, this mindset translates into emotional hedging. Rather than committing fully, some maintain partial engagement, preserving exit options. This caution reduces likelihood of stable family formation. There is also the effect of delayed social maturation. When financial independence arrives later, traditional markers of adulthood shift. Living with parents into late 20s or beyond can be practical economically, yet it postpones autonomous household formation. Without independent living, opportunities to practice partnership skills may diminish. Public conversations about burnout highlight widespread fatigue. Exhaustion reduces capacity for nurturing relationships. If individuals feel depleted by work or social pressure, they conserve energy by minimizing additional commitments. Family life, though rewarding, requires significant emotional investment. The structure of modern friendship networks may also influence behavior. Online communities provide belonging without physical proximity. Shared interests connect individuals globally. While enriching, these networks can substitute for local bonds that historically led to marriage. Virtual companionship eases loneliness but may not progress toward family building. Perceived inequality in dating dynamics can also create frustration. When individuals believe systems are unfair or skewed, they disengage rather than compete. Addressing underlying grievances through open dialogue and cultural recalibration could reduce cynicism. The visibility of alternative lifestyles broadens horizons. Child free identities are openly discussed and validated. Validation reduces stigma, empowering individuals to choose paths aligned with preference. However, widespread validation of non parenthood combined with limited celebration of parenthood may tilt cultural balance. Public infrastructure investments signal long term priorities. When cities allocate resources to nightlife districts rather than playgrounds, subtle messaging communicates target demographics. Balanced urban planning communicates inclusivity of families. Financial market volatility influences long term planning. When retirement portfolios fluctuate dramatically, individuals prioritize stabilization before considering dependence. Economic confidence and fertility correlate historically. The global interconnectedness of crises amplifies uncertainty. Pandemics, supply disruptions, and geopolitical tensions create shared anxiety. In uncertain periods, birth rates often decline temporarily. Prolonged uncertainty can entrench that decline. Educational messaging emphasizing career preparation over life preparation leaves relational skills underdeveloped. Holistic education could address this gap. Corporate mobility expectations also impact stability. Promotions may require relocation across regions or countries. Couples navigating dual career aspirations face complex negotiations. Some avoid entering those negotiations entirely. Public discourse around gender expectations sometimes swings between extremes. Clarity about shared responsibility and mutual respect fosters cooperation, while polarization fosters withdrawal. Housing design within urban high rises often lacks communal spaces. Incorporating shared courtyards, play areas, and gathering rooms could encourage interaction among residents. Financial support for fertility treatments should be paired with preventive education about earlier planning to maximize effectiveness. Media narratives portraying parenting as overwhelming without highlighting joy can distort perception. Balanced representation matters. Community recognition programs celebrating local families build positive association. Economic resilience funds supporting young couples during early child rearing years could reduce stress. Workplace transparency about parental leave usage by senior leaders normalizes participation. Public health campaigns promoting relationship literacy as component of well-being integrate family planning into broader health discourse. Interdisciplinary research combining sociology, psychology, economics, and urban planning can produce nuanced strategies. The perception of scarcity versus abundance shapes fertility decisions. When individuals perceive emotional abundance in supportive networks, willingness to expand family increases. Reframing long term commitment as adaptive rather than restrictive may shift mindset. Partnership evolves individuals through shared challenge. The symbolism of children within public life influences normalization. Visible integration of families into civic events reinforces continuity. Flexible higher education pathways accommodating parenting students encourage earlier family formation without sacrificing academic goals. Tax credits linked to family friendly corporate policies create systemic incentives. Public forums inviting candid discussion about fears surrounding parenthood foster transparency. Cultural exploration of masculinity that embraces nurturing roles broadens identity options. Encouraging men to view fatherhood as extension of strength rather than departure from ambition counters outdated stereotypes. Financial modeling tools accessible through public institutions could provide realistic projections for family budgeting. Cross generational mentorship pairing young professionals with experienced parents provides practical insight. Public investment in safe, accessible transportation for children increases independence and reduces parental burden. Art installations celebrating generational continuity embed message within urban fabric. Community sports leagues inclusive of families strengthen bonds. Promotion of shared parental responsibility in advertising and media reshapes expectation. Educational reform emphasizing collaborative projects fosters teamwork from early age. Housing cooperatives for young couples with shared childcare facilities distribute labor. Policy experimentation at local levels allows testing of innovative family support models. Corporate social responsibility initiatives funding parenting resources demonstrate private sector commitment. Public discourse avoiding alarmist tone while acknowledging challenge maintains motivation without despair. Integration of demographic education into school curricula raises awareness early, encouraging reflective practices about personal long term goals may align individual aspirations with collective continuity. Strengthening labor protections for contract workers enhances stability for potential parents. National recognition days celebrating parenting contributions elevate status. Facilitating cross cultural dialogue on successful fertility strategies broadens perspective. Urban agriculture spaces inviting families to participate cultivate shared purpose. Promoting flexible retirement options, enabling grandparents to assist with childcare, supports intergenerational cooperation. Public acknowledgement that family life and professional excellence are not mutually exclusive counters false dichotomies. Investment in community mental health services reduces relational strain. Encouraging storytelling platforms where families share authentic experiences fosters relatability. Transparent evaluation of demographic interventions ensures learning and adaptation, incentivizing mixed use developments, blending residential, commercial, and childcare facilities reduces commute stress. Promotion of civic pride linked to generational renewal may inspire participation. Educational scholarships tied to community service by families strengthen local bonds. Integrating sustainability education with parenting discussions frames child rearing as stewardship. Providing affordable recreational programs for children reduces financial anxiety. Corporate performance metrics, including employee family satisfaction indicators, signal holistic values. Encouraging paternal involvement from prenatal stages strengthens early bonding. Public campaigns emphasizing shared future rather than individual isolation reorient narrative. Investing in safe public playgrounds and parks demonstrates tangible commitment. Aligning national holidays with family centered activities reinforces symbolism. Offering financial literacy counseling to newly married couples supports stability. Supporting community housing renovations to accommodate multi generational living expands options. Highlighting economic contributions of future generations reframes children as investment in vitality. Promoting volunteer programs pairing single adults with family oriented community service fosters appreciation. Encouraging reflection on personal legacy beyond career may awaken generational interest. Integrating demographic considerations into climate adaptation planning aligns priorities. Public libraries serving as hubs for family education programs strengthen access. Transparent data sharing about successful local initiatives enables replication. Expanding rural broadband infrastructure supports remote work in family friendly regions. Creating cultural narratives that portray partnership as dynamic collaboration rather than static obligation can reshape aspiration. Ultimately, demographic patterns mirror collective imagination about life's trajectory. When societies envision flourishing communities filled with diverse families, structures can align to support that vision. When imagination centers exclusively on solitary success, continuity falters. The pathway forward does not require abandoning autonomy. It requires integrating autonomy within networks of commitment. Men and women choosing partnership freely rather than out of pressure can revitalize demographic stability. Japan's evolving landscape offers insight into the delicate equilibrium between individual freedom and communal survival. The choices of millions, each rational within personal context, aggregate into national destiny. Renewal will emerge not from coercion, but from restored confidence that shared life multiplies rather than diminishes fulfillment. When that confidence spreads, the arithmetic of birth rates will adjust accordingly. At the end of every demographic chart, there are not just numbers, but human faces. It is easy to speak in percentages, to discuss fertility rates and labor force participation as if they are abstract metrics. Yet behind each decline is a choice. Behind each choice is a belief. And behind each belief is a story about what life is supposed to be. If enough stories shift in the same direction, the entire trajectory of a nation bends with them. Japan's transformation did not occur overnight. It unfolded through decades of subtle recalibration. First came economic turbulence that replaced certainty with caution. Then came evolving gender expectations that challenged traditional arrangements without fully replacing them with new stable models. Technology accelerated independence, urban life compressed space and time, work culture consumed energy. Gradually, a generation of men looked at the landscape and decided that participation in conventional dating and marriage no longer felt compelling. Not out of anger in many cases, but out of calculation, not out of protest alone, but out of preference. When a critical mass of men withdraws from courtship, the system that once depended on male initiation falters. Women who may still desire partnership find fewer approaches, mutual hesitation sets in. Both sides interpret the silence differently. Misunderstandings grow in the vacuum. Social spaces that once facilitated connection feel subdued. Over time, disengagement becomes normal rather than exceptional. The implications extend beyond romance. Family formation has long been the engine of demographic continuity. Without it, birth rates fall below replacement. When they remain below replacement for decades, population structures invert. Fewer young people support more elders. Economic strain intensifies. Rural towns lose vitality. Schools consolidate. Cultural rituals centered on children diminish in frequency. This is not a moral judgment, it is arithmetic. A society can adapt to many changes, but it cannot ignore the basic equation of reproduction indefinitely. If each generation is smaller than the last, contraction is inevitable unless offset by migration or sudden shifts in fertility behavior. Some argue that automation will compensate. Robots can assist elderly care. Artificial intelligence can augment productivity. While technology can mitigate labor shortages, it cannot replace the social dimension of continuity. Communities are sustained not merely by output, but by shared meaning across generations. Others suggest that smaller populations may enjoy higher per capita wealth and reduced environmental strain. There is truth in the idea that growth is not inherently virtuous. However, rapid decline disrupts pension systems, healthcare financing, and regional economies built around different expectations. Stability, whether at higher or lower population levels, requires deliberate planning rather than passive drift. The most revealing aspect of Japan's trajectory is the emotional tone of withdrawal. Many men who step away describe peace. They speak of freedom from expectation, relief from social pressure, and satisfaction in personal pursuits. That sense of peace is real, yet it exists alongside a broader unease at the national level. Policymakers express concern. Economists warn of long term contraction. Communities attempt revival initiatives. This tension between individual contentment and collective consequence defines the dilemma. An individual man may live a comfortable, solitary life. A million men doing the same reshape the nation. There is no immediate crisis at the level of the individual. The crisis emerges cumulatively, visible only over decades. Women navigating the same environment confront their own recalibrations. Greater educational attainment and financial independence expand options. Traditional marriage no longer serves as economic necessity. Yet independence also carries its own burdens. Work expectations remain intense. Social networks may not substitute fully for partnership. Delayed fertility narrows windows. Many women find themselves caught between expanded opportunity and persistent structural constraints. When both men and women perceive the current system as misaligned with their aspirations, disengagement spreads, not because one side defeats the other, but because the structure fails to harmonize mutual interests. Restoring harmony requires more than nostalgia for past models. It requires innovation that acknowledges modern realities. A renewed social contract could begin with honest acknowledgement that partnership and parenthood are neither automatic nor obsolete. They are choices that must compete with other attractive alternatives. If societies wish to sustain demographic vitality, they must make those choices appealing rather than obligatory. Appeal does not come from pressure, it comes from alignment. Aligning work schedules with family life, aligning housing markets with affordability, aligning cultural narratives with respect for caregiving, aligning masculine and feminine identities with cooperation rather than rivalry. In practical terms, that alignment may involve continued corporate reform to reduce excessive overtime and expand flexible arrangements. It may require substantial investment in childcare infrastructure so that parenting does not equate to professional sacrifice. It may involve redesigning urban environments to include family friendly spaces rather than exclusively catering to single adult lifestyles. Culturally, it may require reframing the conversation around value. If children are presented primarily as economic cost, hesitation grows. If they are framed as contributors to community, as bearers of cultural continuity, and as sources of shared joy, perception shifts. Language matters. Imagery matters. Visible celebration matters. Educational systems can play a quiet but powerful role by integrating relationship literacy into curricula. Teaching young adults how to navigate disagreement, manage finances jointly, and build trust prepares them for sustainable partnership. Fear often stems from ignorance. Knowledge reduces fear. The media environment also deserves scrutiny. Narratives that sensationalize conflict between genders generate engagement but erode trust. Balanced storytelling that acknowledges challenges while highlighting collaboration could recalibrate expectations. There is also a need for humility. Modern societies have dismantled restrictive norms that limited opportunity, particularly for women. That progress should not be reversed. Instead, the task is to integrate equality with stability. Shared responsibility within households can coexist with professional ambition. Men can embrace nurturing roles without sacrificing strength. Women can pursue careers without abandoning motherhood if structural support exists. Japan's experience reveals how delicate the balance is. Remove too many incentives for partnership while amplifying individual autonomy and participation declines. The solution is not coercion, but recalibration. Autonomy and interdependence are not mutually exclusive. They can reinforce each other when designed thoughtfully. Internationally, other nations observe closely. South Korea faces similar demographic patterns. Parts of Europe struggle with comparable fertility rates. Lessons learned in one context may inform strategies in another. Collaboration across borders can accelerate adaptation. Yet every society possesses unique cultural textures. Solutions must resonate locally. Policies imported without contextual sensitivity may fail. Community engagement is essential. Young adults must feel heard rather than lectured. The psychological element cannot be overstated. Optimism about the future strongly correlates with willingness to invest in it. If public discourse continually emphasizes decline without highlighting capacity for renewal, morale erodes. A narrative of resilience can coexist with realism. In the end, Demographic renewal is not about forcing people into roles. It is about restoring conditions where choosing partnership feels natural and rewarding. Men who have found peace in solitude may reconsider if partnership no longer feels like surrender of autonomy, but expansion of meaning. Women who hesitate due to structural constraints may reconsider if support systems reduce risk. The broader question extends beyond Japan. It concerns how modernity reshapes human connection. Technology, prosperity, and mobility have granted unprecedented freedom. Freedom is valuable, yet freedom without shared purpose can drift toward fragmentation. The future of any nation depends on whether its citizens still see value in building something together. That does not require uniformity. It requires mutual respect and willingness to cooperate across differences. When men and women withdraw into parallel spheres, continuity weakens. When they engage constructively, continuity strengthens. Japan stands at a crossroads not of collapse, but of choice. Adaptation remains possible. Policy reform, cultural innovation, and renewed trust can alter trajectories. The arithmetic of population responds slowly but predictably to sustained change. As this long reflection draws to a close, consider the deeper principle beneath statistics and headlines. Societies are living organisms sustained by relationships. When relationships diminish, vitality diminishes. When relationships flourish, prosperity follows. Shout out to the 2 Hour Gang. You're the real ones. If you are enjoying these angry guy conversations and want to show support, you can buy me a Red Bull using the link in the description. It keeps the engine running and the discussions coming. I also want to hear from you. What did you think about what was discussed? Do you agree? Do you see different factors at play? Leave a comment and share your perspective. Like the video if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you like the video, share the video. And just remember that all roads lead to MWA, men walking away, and cheers.
Nothing says you care like crypto. Nothing can compare. Nothing says you care like crypto. Oh, nothing can compare to crypto.